Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Angela. So this is part 4 and probably the last one of the young Indian girl. This is the conclusion. Now I have seen her a few times since this episode, but in meditation, but this is the last one I really wanted to share with you guys. So the last time I talked about her was, where was we? She was in the field. First I saw her in the cave, and it was all about, I saw the young Indian male first, and then I saw her in the teepee. And then I saw her in the cave running like she was afraid. The teepee was, she was surrounded by all these young gentlemen callers, if you will. And she was laughing and having fun, but inside you could feel that there was a sadness there. And then she was running, and then the scene switched to where she was running in the cave like she was running from something or someone, and she was scared. And then the second time I meditated, she was in a little girl, and she was just free and happy, and there were no like big decisions to make. And I kind of envied her for that, because I don't think I've ever felt that free and innocent happiness as a child. So this is part 3. And so, is it part 3? It might be part 4. I don't know. It's getting late. I've not been feeling well, so I apologize. I will make it right in the description below. So this one is kind of interlocks with the last one, because I was having all these visuals, all these signs, symbols, whatever you want to call them, in these meditations of this young Indian girl at different ages. And I had found, because I'm a writer, I'm trying to make it as a writer, I had found recently a great like vintage bookstore. Ironically, they sold a lot of spiritual books, which I see that as a hindsight thing now. It's like it was meant to be, because these are my people. But anyway, he had this, the owner had this really cool, there was a hippie vibe going on, but it was old school. It was, my door's always open. It was amazing. They've since moved locations. They still give you that vibe that everyone's welcome, but it's a much smaller location now because of things happening. But at the time, he had just like these like man-made bookshelves, or well, all bookshelves are man-made. These like homemade wooden bookshelves that were super tall. And he had them just lined up with books. There would be books on the floor, books like on shelves, just randomly tucked in, because this was the chaos of where my people are in books. It's just, they were everywhere. And he had created this space in the very back where there was like this cubby kind of, where you could just sit in a chair and write or meditate or whatever you wanted to do. And so at one point I started coming in on Saturdays and just writing and writing and writing. And one of the times I came in to write, I was sitting there and I wrote maybe 2.5 hours. I sat there constantly writing in the zone. And so I got done with the chapter I had been working on. And I was like, this is the perfect place to meditate. There's like hardly anybody in here. Nobody even knows this cubby's back here. I think I'm just going to sit here and meditate for a while. So I sat there, and it was maybe 2 to 3 minutes tops. And I was meditating. I was breathing. I was feeling like presence of people around me. And all of a sudden, I saw in my mind's eye the young Indian girl. And this time, instead of being 16 or 6, she was maybe 21, 22. Beautiful, tall, long hair. She had like a white nightgown on. And she was just kind of looking over her shoulder at me, smiling like, come here. And so I tried to ignore her, and the more I tried to ignore her, all of a sudden it was in a loop. I just saw her, kept seeing her and seeing her and seeing her on this loop. And I'm like, she's not going to leave me alone until I follow her through the bookstore. So I got up and I followed her, what I felt like where she had been, around the corner. And then all of a sudden it was just like a dead end. Like, I wound up in the very back corner of the bookstore, a place I don't think I'd ever been. There was a long aisle of bookshelf ahead of me, but I felt like she had stopped right in front of the beginning of aisle at this bookshelf. And I'm standing there and I'm just looking around. I'm like, okay, what now? And as soon as that came out of my mouth, it was literally like someone had taken a hold of my hand, my right hand, and moved it up to the top bookshelf and pulled down a book. And I had no control over my hand. And as it's coming down, I look, and my hand is like, it's almost like I want to say it was glowing, but I feel like now, in retrospect, that it was the first time I'd actually seen my aura on. It was just my hand, though. And that's my dog. Sorry, she's now all of a sudden wanting out. But yeah, my hand was glowing. I grabbed this book, like my hand had reached up, grabbed the book, and I was like, okay, like, really? So I'm looking at the back of it, or I'm actually looking at the front of it. It's The 10 Grandmothers by Alice Marriott. And I'm looking at this cover, and I'm like, what am I supposed to be seeing in this? And if you see closely here, it says An Epic of the Kiowas, which I did not know what they were. And it was in, and I look at the back, and I started reading, and I almost instantly started crying, because it says The 10 Grandmothers, A History of the Kiowa Tribe, and of their transformation from a nomadic plains tribe to a settled agricultural people, told with the stark simplicity and economy of line of a Chinese brush drawing. The 10 Grandmothers were sacred medicine bundles, which down through the Indian generations had grown to be surrounded by a web of legends and superstition. This book has a mighty impact of almost Homeric beauty and wonder, tragedy and bravery. And I'm like, it's Native Americans, and she's Native American, and what the hell? And there's even a map. It's somewhere in here. Well, it's not on there. There's a map in here that shows where these tribes had settled, which were mostly in Kansas and Missouri, which is where I live. And it was just like, what is happening? And so, hold on, I'll be right back. Sorry about that. I had to let her out. She wouldn't leave me alone. So, and it's the University of Oklahoma Press, Norman, Oklahoma, is where the book was published. And I have to say this book was amazing. As I'm reading through it, I still do not understand why she pointed this book out to me. There's a girl in here called Bow Girl. B-O-W, like bow and arrow girl. That was her name. She was married. She wound up marrying a guy that was, I think, part Cherokee, which is, I've got a lot of Cherokee in me, so that's just, I just found it very weird. And about halfway through the book, her parents decide she's old enough to be married and want to marry her off. There are several options, but she's in love with the half Cherokee guy. Because he's not full Kiowa, her parents do not approve of him because he's a half-breed, which is weird. And I do have to say these are real stories taken from, I know that, and I forgot his name, but I know they existed. I know they, through the generations, these stories were told, and then the book was written. So they may not be 100% accurate, but these are true stories of real Native Americans. And the struggles they went through, it goes over like a 50 to 60 year period, maybe even longer, of the same group of characters, well, people, and one of them is Bow Girl. I absolutely, as soon as I started reading about her, I was like, either she is the young Indian girl I've been seeing, or she is an ancestor of mine, or both. And it's just indescribable. There was so much, such a spiritual thing reading this book. I had to read it in chunks because it literally felt like it was feeding me. And I was so full after a couple of chapters, I'd have to put it down for a week before I could pick it back up and finish more. It took me probably a month to read this just because it was so crazy. Like, all of the visions I was seeing actually happened in this book. Okay, so we notice the beginning of my first vision was the young male dancing around the fire praying. And I really feel a sense that that was the guy that she was told she could not be with because he was a half-breed. Then it switches to the young Indian girl in the tent. She's 16, 17 years old. This is right around the time her parents are like, oh, you need to be married by now. She's many options. There's several men in the tent with her, and she's playing along, but she's not happy because her heart already belongs to someone else. And then there was the cave where she is literally running away from something. Her hair's flying in the cave. She's running so fast, so far away, so fast that her hair is flying back. Well, we get to the point in this book where all of these things have happened, and they meet in secret and decide we're going to leave together. If they find us, if we get out of the encampment that we're in, and then come back, because apparently in that tribe, if they are on a horse together and ride somewhere and come back, they're married. So they can't stop them once they're gone and come back. They'll be married. And there was a funny part of it because the horse ran away. So he enlisted his cousin to bring him another horse, and he brought him a donkey because he didn't know the difference between a horse and a donkey. So they rode and tried sneaking away on the donkey. They didn't get very far, but I feel that moment was what I was seeing in the visual. She wasn't running away from someone. She was running toward him and afraid she would get caught in the process. Um, so, and it's weird because I had those meditations 3 to 4 months before I ever laid eyes on this book. Never heard of the book, never heard of the tribe before. And I just feel such a connection with the people in this book. There's no way that I'm either not related to them somehow, or maybe they're some kind of spirit guide, something that's a physical, emotional, spiritual connection to them. And I love having a written history book of the things I saw. It's just amazing. And so, yeah, that was just, I can't, if you haven't read this book, it may not hit you the same way, but it is well worth the read. It shows the struggle of them losing the buffalo, losing their land, winding up on a reservation, figuring out how to survive on a reservation now that they're not completely free. And what killed me in this book was, at one point I was like, I need the last chapter to be Bow Girl, because it was showing them growing up and getting older and having kids. And the chief that it started out as just beginning, the chief had died at that point. He was so old, he'd already given up his reins. He had died. I think that was a story before the last story, because each little chapter is its own little story of these different people. And so what killed me with this book was, at the very end, I get to the last chapter, and it is a Bow Girl. She's in her 90s. She's just mourning the loss of her childhood, her youth, the buffalo. They're all gone. She hasn't seen a buffalo in years, and she winds up, her granddaughter comes up in a car, because it's like, I want to say the 30s. By the end of it, it's like the 30s. I was 19. Let me see. The last chapter is 1944. So it wasn't terribly long ago. But for history, that is, it wasn't that long ago. But what killed me is the last chapter was about Bow Girl, and she's so sad. She's older. You can tell she's she's given up on life, on moving on, of living, and all she wants before she dies is to see buffalo again. And her granddaughter comes up in a car with her husband. She's now grown and has kids of her own. And she says, well, she's talking about the buffalo and how she misses them and wishes she could see them again. And her granddaughter says, well, they have over in Kansas, I think it was, I can't remember the name of the town. It's like the capital, Kansas now. I can't remember. They have buffalo farms where they grow buffalo, and she's like, what? Take me there. So she winds up taking her to this buffalo farm, and I think it's Topeka. She winds up taking her there, and they pull up next to this like big oak tree, and at this point I'm in the story. It's like I'm watching it unfold. I'm there, and they pull up to this big oak tree, and it's just empty field, and there's no buffalo. And she is just so distraught because she just wanted a piece of her youth back, where she felt free and was able to see the buffalo again. And she gets out, she starts singing the old buffalo song that the tribe used to go right before they went out for the war party, for the hunting. She starts singing this old song that she hasn't sang in like 50 years. And um, she gets out of the car and singing it, and she's crying, and her hair is whipping in the wind, and it's just like, you're so distraught for her. You want her to see the buffalo. And she starts walking up over the hill. And this is the part I started bawling because um, she walks up over the hill, and the first thing you see is a field of red daisies. Which, if you know, and we watched the video too, that's the part I saw was a field of red daisies when she was 6 years old in the field. And so I lost my shit at that point. I was like, are you effing kidding me? And so she's singing it, and she's sad, and she's walking through this field of red daisies, and all of a sudden, here come the buffalo. And that's how the book ends. And I was just like, this is nuts. Like, this is crazy, because I've now seen every vision at that point I had, every meditation vision I'd had at that point was in this book, including the red daisies. And I was just like floored. I'm like, I still don't know what this book is supposed to mean to me. I know it's very special. I know that maybe it was just because it was the very beginning of my spiritual journey and beginnings, and I questioned like everything, and I knew I needed some kind of proof positive that what I was seeing, the things that I was seeing were real, and maybe that's why she pointed the book out to me. Or maybe it is something deeper than that, and it is an ancestor of some sort. All I know is I don't cry, and this book had me crying through the whole book. Not just because of their struggle, but because of the things I was seeing months before I ever read this book were in here. And I'm just like, there's no explanation for that. It has to be spirit. It has to be someone proving to me you do see things. You're not crazy. You're not going insane. You are seeing things, and they're really happening to you. And so for that, this book will always have a special place in my heart. And he actually gave this to me for free because I'm his buddy, the bookstore guy. But yeah, it changed me in so many ways. It opened my mind. I think I was more still closed off to so many things because of my upbringing in the Pentecostal church and stuff. And then once I got a hold of this book and started reading it, I was like, oh my God, like everything that I had seen that pertained to her at that point was in here. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys. That is my conclusion to the epic of The Young Indian Girl and I. So if you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more, please subscribe. And yeah, have a great night.